Meeting of the City of Morgantown Board of Zoning Appeals. Please turn off all cell phones and other devices that may disrupt these proceedings. It is the duty of this board to consider requests for relief from the requirements of the city's zoning regulations, to consider conditional use permit requests, and to hear administrative appeals. The board conducts business in the following order: review, amend, and approve meetings of a previous meeting, move to unfinished business, take up new business, and conclude with announcements from staff. Each request is heard in the order that it appears on the agenda. For each conditional use and variance request, the following is done. I will introduce the agenda item, and the Planning Division will present a staff report which may or may not offer a recommendation. The applicant agent will be asked to present their justification for their request, which may include questions by members of the board. We will then open a public hearing to hear testimony in support of or in opposition to the request. Rules regarding public testimony are as follows. Anyone wishing to testify during the public hearing may do so once recognized by me, or in lieu of oral testimony, submit written testimony to the chair. All recognized speakers must approach the podium, state their name and address for the record, and speak clearly into the microphone. All comments must be addressed to the board, should be relevant to the application, and may not be of a personal nature or personal attacks. All speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. If members of the board have any questions of the speaker, that time will not be counted toward his/her 5 minutes. If there is a large number of speakers, including many who are part of groups or organizations, I may, to avoid repetitive comments, elect to ask for a representative to speak on behalf of the group or organization. Speakers are notified that irrelevant comments or comments of a personal nature or personal attacks may result in the speaker forfeiting his/her opportunity to participate in the public hearing. I may elect to recognize the applicant agent at the end of the public hearing to provide rebuttal or additional comments, which will be limited to an additional 5 minutes. If members of the board have any questions of the applicant agent, that time will not be counted toward the total of 5 minutes. After all testimony is heard, I will declare the public hearing closed, and no further public comment will be permitted. Uncivil, unruly, and/or disruptive behavior at any time during this meeting, is prohibited and will result in removal from this public meeting. State law requires the board to consider findings of fact for each conditional use and variance request. The request cannot be granted unless a majority of the quorum present finds in the positive of all of the findings of fact. The board may elect to continue the hearing to another date if it needs additional information. Applicants and requesting parties will be notified in writing by the Planning Division of the board's findings and conclusions. Regardless of whether a request is approved or denied, decisions of the board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Montague County within 30 days upon receipt of the written notification from planning. Any work done relating to decisions rendered by this board during this 30-day appeal period is at the sole financial risk of the applicant. Thank you for your consideration and respect for these proceedings and the opinions of all meeting participants. So let's take the roll. Mr. Plyler.
Here.
Mr. Matt Schaller. Present?
Present.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Benson, sorry, I got your name, last name wrong. Our newest member here. We do have a quorum, so we need to consider meeting minutes from the regular November 21st, Wednesday, November 21st, 2024 meeting. Any comments or suggested changes? I didn't see anything.
Not for me.
Okay, so we'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from the Wednesday, November 21st, 2024 meeting. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a second. How do we vote to accept?
Aye.
Aye. Duly accepted. So we're going to move to We don't have any old business. New business, the first case here is VAR 24-181 Solis Plaza, Jalisco. Actually, that's,
A quick announcement in the beginning. Variance 24-181 for Plaza Jalisco, as well as the variance for variance 24-182 City Neon. Both of those will not be at this meeting. They, upon further review, they actually do not need a variance. And
so agenda items A and B, we will not be taking them up?
correct.
Okay.
And
Duly noted.
And as an additional note, we usually will have a kind of visual PowerPoint up there that won't be available for this meeting, unfortunately. Going forward, there'll be one. Packets were printed off and also handed out.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke because, Mr. Geiger did inform me that there were some changes to the agenda items.
So-
Sorry about that.
it's all good. And there's also one extra one up here that if anybody will need it when they go up to the stand, I'll
Right.
hand it off.
That's amended. Or no, a meeting packet, you mean?
Yeah, for a meeting packet for those who might not, who want like a visual
I see.
assistance on it.
Right. Okay, thank you. So, as amended then, the first agenda item then is previously C, VAR 24-183.
Correct, that's the
Logan
first.
Marino. So
the
that's
first
our
one.
first case this evening. Thank you, everyone. So our first case this evening is VAR 24-183, Logan Marino at, or it's referenced as 232 Gordon Street. Request by Logan Marino on behalf of Mark Rogers for variance relief from section 1331.09 of the city's planning and zoning code regarding fences, City Tax District 10, Second Ward, Tax Map 34, Parcel 670 in the R1A Single Family Residential District.
The applicant seeks to build a 9-foot-tall privacy fence on a recently constructed deck. The fence would be made of wood and will have a opacity of 100%. There are staff enhanced maps in the packets. The first one being just kind of the parcel view to show where it's located. And going on to that second image is a picture from the kind of front of the home, from the street, where you can see the fence where it would be located. And then that picture afterwards is the kind of rear from their, inside of their yard looking towards the road, positioned where it would be on the deck from when you're on that side of the home. Based on the conditions listed above, the applicant requests the following. Variance relief in the form of allowing an additional 2.5 feet regarding permitted height of a fence, as well as variance relief in the form of allowing for 100% opacity above 6.5 feet. And then that concludes staff report.
Before we get underway, with regard to the opacity and what's allowed under the ordinances, can you speak to why is 100% opacity, especially above a certain height, problematic? Not problematic, but not permissible.
At least in the code, above that certain point, it's not allowed, and from my understanding of it, mostly it's related for like vision triangle reasons or things related to just so you can't construct like kind of a giant wall and call it a fence would be my understanding of it. For something that can't be maybe in the future enclosed, at least when I'm reading the thoughts that I see related to it would be more of for vision triangle if that's applicable, or for if you're trying to turn it into something that it's not. And above that height, I assume it was looked at, that's not really a fence anymore.
Right. So fence versus like structure envelope construction. Yeah. All right. Thank you. So you're all set, Ben?
Yep.
Okay.
That
So do we have a representative for this case? Please approach the podium and state your name or just whoever would like to speak.
Hi, Mark Rogers. And I'm here, I prepared something, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, all right.
Oh,
Thank-
can you,
yeah.
so I don't think I heard an address, though, for you. Can you restate your address?
My address?
Yeah.
232 Gordon Street,
Okay,
Morgantown.
just state that for the
Yeah,
record.
sure thing.
Oh, thank you, sorry.
That's fine. Thank you, board members. Thank you for allowing me to speak today regarding our request for a variance for a privacy wall attached to our deck. I'd like to explain how this situation came about, why this variance is necessary, and how it aligns with the intent of the zoning ordinance while having no negative impact on our neighbors or the community. First of all, when we submitted our original deck building permit, the privacy wall was included in the plans. The application was approved, and we proceeded in good faith to construct the deck and privacy wall as planned. However, during one of the final inspections, we were informed that the privacy wall had actually not technically been approved because it was only depicted in the drawing, but not explicitly mentioned in the text of the application. We just want to make it clear that we never intended to ignore or circumvent any city zoning laws. We value and respect the zoning regulations and believe this was an honest misunderstanding. The privacy wall is positioned entirely within our property boundaries, away from property lines and neighboring structures. Its design ensures it blends aesthetically with the surroundings. This is not an imposing structure, rather enhances our property and neighborhood's visual appeal. It is attached to the deck itself rather than being anchored in the ground like a traditional fence. Measured from the decking, the top of the decking, it's 5 feet tall, and the length is 18 feet. The elevation of the deck at 2.5 feet above the ground at that location has caused the wall's height to exceed the city's 6.5-foot fence limit, but this was not an attempt to circumvent restrictions. The zoning ordinance intent is to control fence heights to protect sight lines and ensure neighbor privacy. Our privacy wall does not obstruct sight lines or neighbor views because it's located well within our property and is far from boundaries. Without this variance, the privacy wall would need to be lowered to comply with the 6.5-foot height restriction. However, this would defeat its purpose as a lower wall would only extend about 4 feet above the deck surface. This would undermine the privacy and functionality of the deck, making it less usable as an outdoor living space. We believe granting this variance would eliminate an unnecessary hardship and allow us to make reasonable use of our deck as originally intended. In summary, this variance request arises from unique conditions specific to our property and was not the result of any intent to bypass zoning regulations. The privacy wall enhances the use of our deck while respecting the broader goals of the zoning ordinance. It is an honest and reasonable request that will not negatively impact the community. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So your deck, as proposed, you designed it with the completed privacy fence, and it's integrated into the overall design of your deck plan,
Correct. Yeah.
which is reasonable.
And
And additionally, the height of the deck is probably driven by just where you're exiting your home.
yes.
Above ground
Yeah,
level.
at one end towards our backyard, you could step right off the deck. It's 5 inches above the ground, maybe, or right on the ground. But the way our property is sloped,
Right.
as you go down, then it starts to get higher and higher. It's about like 2.5, 3 feet, something like that.
So, yeah, so in other words, generally speaking,
So if we had the
property slope is driving
right,
height of
if
the
we-
deck, and then, hey, we want to integrate a privacy fence, and what's, in terms of the height of the fence above grade, is driving what's going on with the privacy
Yeah,
fence.
if we had it actually on the other side of the deck, I don't think I'd be here today. But that's not really where we needed the privacy wall. We needed it from the street,
Right.
Yeah, because the fence itself is how tall?
5 foot
Right, yeah.
from the top of the deck. So then that puts it about 6.5, maybe a little more
From the ground.
from the ground. This is Logan, he's our contractor.
Yeah, we already constructed the wall there. You can see it in the pictures. That was constructed before I realized that we had a problem with the permitting. it's, if you measure from the ground to the top of the wall, I think on the highest side, it might have been somewhere between 8 and 9 feet. On the other side, it was, a lot closer. Majority of their land lays to where it's like, 5 inches to about a foot on the deck, but then that one side, it just drops pretty quick there. I mean, it's already constructed, you can see how it's going to look. At this point, is really, are we going to be able to keep it how it is or make some kind of modification?
Yeah, that was my next question. So is this done? Or is it, okay.
You mentioned that this is, you're coming retroactively because documentation was submitted, a permit for construction was issued, and then you were told that, oh, there's a hiccup with the permit,
Right.
correct?
Basically,
So,
yes.
can you sort of just give a summary of what types of drawings were included? And, yeah,
So when I first submitted the plans, I'm pretty sure we submitted like a survey.
If you're going to speak, could you guys switch?
Okay, sorry.
Again, state your name, and if your address differs, please just for thoroughness sake, state your address.
Okay, my name's Logan Marino, and my business address is 1625 Big Tree Drive, Fairmont, West Virginia. So I can't remember exactly what all I submitted at the beginning, but I knew there was a drawing that kind of showed the location of where the new deck was going to be built, which was right where the old one was. We built a little bit bigger than the old one, so we had to make sure we met the setbacks. So we had a survey done. The survey showed that the neighbor's fence was pretty much right on the property line, so we had a good spot to measure from to know where to put our deck. When I drew that up, I drew a line where we were going to put that privacy fence, and at the time when me and Mark were talking, we thought it was going to be a 7-foot tall privacy fence. So I actually wrote on the plan 7 foot tall. The longer me and Mark talked about it, it actually went from 7 foot tall above the deck to 5 foot tall, which that was never redone, I guess, for the 5 foot height on the plans. On the plans that I drew, I guess you would call them construction plans, it showed the deck, the neighbor's fence line, where I wanted to put the privacy wall. My mistake was when I went through the process of the permit, and forgive me because I was very green at the new permit process, right? It went from being in person, talking to people, to now we have to try to fit everything on the computer and make it right. And this was, I believe, my first or second permit I submitted with the new system, So on the literature part, where you put in exactly what you're doing, everything was there besides the wall. And that was even including some of the other stuff like landscaping and gazebo and stuff like this. Well, then I think Eileen called me and we had to separate all that out. Now, I don't know if I had it in the original one, but when she had me separate everything, and that permit went through, that permit literature did not specifically speak on the privacy wall. It was still in the drawing that I presented, but that was about it. And then what happened, we went ahead and proceeded with the build once we got the permit. The wall was done, and I can't remember, I think maybe Saylor called me and asked me something about the fence, or asked if we were going to build a fence or something like that. And I said, well, it's already done, and that's how we found out there was a problem.
All right.
To speak to that a little bit, on that...
In the resubmittal, it sounds like you included everything in the initial submittal.
I honestly don't
include-
remember.
The mentioning of, are you referencing the, that kind of like, not the gazebo, but the terminology used was gazebo, and then I believe like a hot tub style thing.
Yeah.
Those are on separate permits, and those weren't indicated on the original one that was reviewed for the deck. Those weren't included. They were already separated out, to my knowledge, when we looked at it.
There was some reason I had to resubmit Eileen called me to resubmit. And there was another one I had to resubmit on too, because the process on the computer is a little confusing, right? And if you don't use it a lot, I mean, obviously you're not going to be perfect at it. So if you click the wrong box because you think it's right, and then she calls you and has you redo the whole thing. And, you know, maybe the day that you sat down and did it, you had everything out in front of you and you were, you know, mind on it, and then all of a sudden you're rushing to get it done because you thought you already had it done, and now we're waiting again. It was definitely not my intentions to construct something that was going to cause a problem.
So, just to make sure I completely understand, when you submitted the drawings,
Yes, sir.
it clearly stated that there was a privacy wall of the height doesn't really matter, but a privacy wall of a certain height.
There was.
It was depicted on the map, but maybe the description,
Can I come over there?
yes, please.
Sure.
Okay, so like, Sailor, you don't have a copy of the.
No, to give an example of what the designs he's talking about, they were top down, and it just notated, I believe, an 8-foot wall. And that was assumed that was a part for supporting the deck
I
on initial
drew this
review,
out,
because
right?
there was no data group
Then
or
on
things
this side,
referenced to
I had a
that.
line that went like this,
Okay.
and the line that come through it said 7-foot wall.
Okay. So the reason why I'm asking this question is, so there was an inadvertent omission from the text, but when it went through the city, you did notify, this is what we're doing. So that in the drawings, it stated,
7-foot wall.
it stated there was a wall that was exceeding the requirements to begin with,
Right,
and you were given a permit.
yes.
The fact that you're here is not your fault. You would have ended up here regardless, but you wouldn't have constructed the fence if you were notified
You're a
originally.
half foot
Right.
above what's allowed.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to parse. Was a permit mistakenly given for a fence, or
The
did
permit
he
was
think
given
that the
for a-
fence was included in the deck?
The second option. It was
Okay.
a deck permit that
Okay.
only pertains to a deck. And the addition of like a railing on top of that doesn't require a fence permit, but those are within a normal what a railing would be. And on the submitted site plans or drawings or attachments that they submitted, out of all of them, only one referenced that wall, and it was a top-down kind of vertical aerial look.
Right.
And it said 8 foot, I believe I think it was 8 foot, it might have been 7 foot, but height, like you said,
But,
is
I mean,
regardless. It said a
regardless
7 foot wall.
But if it
at
was
the end.
above, if the number was above
Mm-hmm.
a lot, that would have triggered, you're above that.
The
You're
initial
gonna need a
assumption.
variance with respect to the
Right.
fence, which was, regardless of how it was described, it was depicted on the plan.
It was made known.
The assumption being it was a supporting wall for the deck. There wasn't any pictures of like from grade looking at it to give a view. So
As
looking
apart
at
from the opacity issue, you mean?
there wasn't reference to that either, yeah. But it was a supporting wall for the deck, like it would go under the deck, was how I interpreted it, looking at it. Because there
So-
was no other data group or notation anywhere other than that one drawing that just said 8-foot wall.
So it was I think this is an example of a inadvertent miscommunication on several.
Correct, and that's what I was
Parties.
going to say. I feel like a little bit more like human
Yeah,
communication
and-
before the permit was served would have maybe been better.
You just thought the scope of the permit was bigger than it was.
In
Yeah.
my defense, in Fairmont's where I do the majority of my work, right? And when we submit a permit for a job, it's one permit for the entire job. Don't matter if it's 10,000 or 100,000. So I'm still getting used to the new ways of how exactly Morgantown does it. I know that's not an excuse, and I didn't mean to leave it out of the literature, but that's how it went. I remember when I talked to Sailor on the first call, he said that they thought, because I put that note about the privacy wall on the plans, they thought that meant it was the neighbor's privacy wall, but you
That's
can
adjacent to it.
clearly show I wasn't like over top of the privacy wall in those pictures, but
Okay.
that was the thought.
So to get to so there was some inadvertent miscommunication that led to the sort of flip-flop process. But to get to the actual meat, the effective height is somewhere around 5 feet, correct?
It's 5 foot exactly.
Okay. And the technical, or from ground level, the height is 8, 9 feet?
Something like that, yes.
But in no way does this wall, this fence, obstruct sightlines from the street.
No, so the back of the property is like probably 10 foot higher than our fence. There's like an alley right there. And then the front of the property where that street is probably like 10 foot below the fence, so, and I think the closest neighbor is maybe like, I don't know, 100 foot behind us, maybe more.
So you're just putting a hot tub on the deck?
That's right.
That's what the fence is
Yeah,
for?
I just wanted a little bit of privacy
Yeah.
for,
Yeah. And we've already noted the unique character of the property, given the slope. And as far as adjacent property owners, I mean, just look at the neighbors in the picture here, where their deck and everything is. Yeah, they're not, it's
You
not
see
going
our
to bother the
handrail.
neighbor any.
Our handrail there is
And it's
just
not,
a-
it obviously has nothing to do with property
Yeah.
owners on the other side.
Right.
And there's absolutely zero intentions of closing anything off to make it a room or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Nope. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing for the case VAR 24-183, Logan Marino, 232 Gordon Street. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to this case, now's your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we're going to close the public hearing. Mr. Thompson?
Please see the attached application to review the findings of fact listed, as staff had no comments or modifications. Staff have no objections to the applicant's request for variance relief. If the Board of Zoning Appeals grants the applicant variance relief from Section 133109A, Part 1 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code, the new addition shall be subject to the following conditions. And those are in your packet.
So there's just one condition,
Yep.
or suggested condition. All right. I mean, I'm comfortable with, it was depicted on the original plan, and they did specify during one of the submittals the height. And it sounds to me
I mean, I don't
as
even
if
think we
they've
need.
made a good faith effort to do their due diligence with respect to what's required.
Yeah. I mean, regardless, I think there's independent grounds to grant the variance, and we're not here to retroactively
Right.
enforce the,
Right.
someone building beyond this scope of a building permit. That's not really, it's not our purview. I think the findings of fact reflect what we noted about, is the slope noted in the special conditions of the property?
Yeah, the elevation naturally places the privacy wall higher, then it goes on. So that references.
On
Okay.
page 35.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with these findings of fact.
And I do just want to say one thing. Thank you for these detailed
Yes.
answers to your findings, to the findings of fact.
And for
Much
your initial
appreciated.
statement as well. And for your initial statement, Mr. Rogers. Yes.
Speaking of the
Maybe, but just approach so it's into the microphone.
Speaking of the permit process, I did include all the money part of the permit in the permit.
Okay.
Right. So it's not like I constructed the wall and didn't tell the city that, hey, this wall costs X amount of dollars. It's all in that,
Okay.
that deck permit construction.
Okay.
Especially this condition is inherent to the design of the deck. Because it
Yeah.
was, it was an integrated design from the get-go.
Yeah.
All right, I make a motion to accept the findings of fact for VAR 24-183, Logan Marino, 232 Gordon Street.
Seconded.
So we have a motion to accept findings of fact for this case, seconded by Mr. Misfeld. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have a motion to grant? Would anyone like to?
I'll move to grant the request for a variance with staff conditions and the findings of fact as listed.
Yes, and that condition is, I just want to reference, it's referenced on page 5 of the meeting packet, just one condition. So we have a motion to grant the variance for VAR 24-183. I will second that motion. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye. So we have granted your variance request for your case. As stated at the beginning of the meeting, the decision as rendered by this board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Montague County within 30 days upon receipt of the written notification from planning, which is usually within 10 business days or so. And any work you or your contractor undertakes in this 30-day period, you do at your sole financial risk. Thank you very much for coming down this evening. Take care. All right, moving on to the next case, we have VAR 24-188, Dolores John, 260 Dormont Street, request by Dolores John on behalf of Jeffrey and Angela Bennett, for variance relief from Article 1333.07 B5 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code regarding front-load garages, City Tax District 9, First Ward, Tax Map 37, parcels 341 in the R1, single-family residential district. And given the circumstances of this case, I'm electing to recuse myself. Mr. Plyler will continue the proceedings, and I will be back.
Well, hold on, so do we have a quorum then? Okay.
Yeah, because he's in attendance and you're personally kind of removing yourself, it's okay, as long as
Okay.
We did consult city attorney,
Oh, okay.
so,
yeah,
Okay.
well, the bylaws.
yeah.
Yeah.
As long as the 2/3 is met,
Attendance,
then
okay.
you're good, so. For this case, the applicant seeks to build an attached garage and pantry/mudroom to a single-family dwelling. This addition includes an attic above the garage, as well as a bathroom and other space connecting to the principal structure. And on that first image referenced in the packet, that's the typical top-down kind of parcel view of where they're located. That second one kind of shows the drawing, like the dimensions of this garage, where it's going to be located, as well as the kind of attachment structure to connect it to the home. The dotted line represents the distance between the front facade of the home and the property line, and then, excuse me, the dashed line represents the distance between the farthest forward part of the garage and the property line. The third and fourth images just show pictures of what the home looks like and where it will be placed relative to the home as well as the road. The third image being it from kind of that front view from the street directly across from the entrance of the home, and then the fourth picture is from that side where that garage would be located. Based on the conditions listed above, the applicant requests the following variance relief in the form of allowing a front-load garage to extend closer to the front lot line than the primary building line of the front facade. And that concludes staff report.
Do we have a representative come forward, please? And remember to state your name and address.
Dolores John. I represent the owner of the home. I'm the architect. My address is 440, my business address is 449 Fortress Boulevard, Morgantown.
If you could give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, so the homeowners desire to construct an attached garage to the property. In order to do so and make it a usable garage to be able to park inside of, it needs to be such a size that the front of the garage is closer to the property line, the front property line, than the existing house. but the unique nature of the property is rounded in front. So we believe that the garage meets the intent of the zoning code in that it's a front-facing garage. It's still a step back from the existing house, just by the virtue of the rounded lot line. The garage is 3 feet closer to the front lot line than the existing house is. As you can see in this drawing of ours, the dark poche or the dark shading represents the existing house. The light shading represents the proposed garage. As Sailor said, the red line represents, the dashed red line represents the 25-foot setback of the front wall of the garage, the proposed garage, whereas the house sits back 28 feet from the existing property line.
So the only real issue here is the setback.
They're actually good with their setbacks because they're on what's allowed. It's just the line of code that references that a front-load garage cannot extend closer than the front facade of the home towards the front lot line.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So they're actually they're within setbacks. Though,
Right.
so-
We're within the setbacks. We're actually at the setback line.
Correct.
It's just that one provision in the code that indicates that front-load garages have to be, that they cannot extend closer to the front yard lot line than the primary building. And when in fact, when you're looking at it from the front, it does. It's just the nature of the property line.
It's just because of the curve, yeah.
It's a quirk. Yeah, it's a
Quirk,
quirk.
yeah.
Yeah. And effectively, when you're out there, it would never register to anybody that the garage is closer to the lot line than the
Correct.
house. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't have any other questions.
I think this one's honestly really quite straightforward. Yeah, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay?
Yep.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, so now we'll open the public hearing portion of this. I think if any member of the public would like to come forward, talk in favor of or against. Hearing nothing, we'll close the public hearing.
Please see the attached application to review the findings of fact listed, as staff had no comments or modifications. Staff have no objections to the applicant's request for variance relief, and if the Board of Zoning Appeals grants the applicant variance relief from Section 133307B, Part 5 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code, the new addition shall be subject to the following conditions, written in your packet.
Once again, the findings of fact are really good. I'm very happy with those.
Yes, yeah, I don't have any issues with these. Your findings of fact address the specific questions, which they don't always, so I appreciate that. And again, I think the findings of fact back up that it's in a regular shape. Most properties and most of our zoning is set up for rectilinear properties, so this is something outside of that. So it's bound to have run up against that. So, yeah, I don't have any problems.
I'll move to accept the findings of fact
Okay,
as listed.
All right, I second. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so the findings of fact have been approved. Do we have a motion to grant the variance?
Was there any staff condition or
Oh, yeah.
recommendation?
The only condition was pretty much that variance is only given in reference to this line of code. If they desire or change anything, they cannot
Okay.
get variance for other lines of code.
Okay. I'll move to grant the request for the variance with the staff condition included and findings of fact as listed.
All right, I second. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye. All right, your variance has been granted. Please remember that You will receive a report within 7 to 10 business days, and it can be appealed to the Mon County Circuit Court of Appeals, within 30 days. If you proceed, you do so at your sole financial risk. All right, thank you. Sure.
Thank you, everyone. All right. Next case is VAR 24-190 Monongalia Arts Center, 107 High Street. Request by Monongalia Arts Center for variance relief from Section 1369 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code regarding conditions for permitted signs. City Tax District 11, 3rd Ward, Tax Map 28A, Parcel 23.1, B4, General Business District.
The applicant seeks to install museum-style banners on the front of the historic post office highlighting the Mon Arts Center, Artist Studios, YCF, and the History Museum at the above referenced location. The two new signs will encompass approximately 180 square feet in area. The maximum area permitted is 120.6 square feet. The difference between what is permitted and what is being asked for is 59.4 square feet. The first image is the standard top-down look at the parcel and then the reference location around it. The second image is it shows what the banners are going to look like and what they will have on them, the design of those banners. The third, as well as the fourth image, are going to be where those banners are then located once installed and put up onto the building if variance is given. Based on the conditions listed above, the applicant requests the following. Variance relief in the amount of 59.4 square feet for the maximum sign area permitted for the proposed banner signs, as well as variance relief from Section 136908B3 regarding sign materials. And that concludes staff report.
Thank you. With regard to the materials request, does that relate to the grommeting to affix the?
No, it's just by banners in the sign code are permitted by material. It's like vinyl or stuff like that.
Right.
But that cloth, like banner material, isn't permitted
Right.
by code.
So the proposed, this is fabric?
Yeah, it's cloth, fabric, banner material.
Right. Okay. Makes sense.
And is that, I'm just trying to remember, is that material issue related to the particular zoning area?
No, it's just general for all signs. It's
So
just general for all
regardless
signs.
of, without respect to historic overlay districts or
the
that's
banner
just
was if the
across the
banner was
board?
located in different districts, it would still be held to that same kind of material requirement. To note, if it was a temporary banner and it went through the process to be allowed for that, the material part it would be included in that as a temporary use. So just as a note for that.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of my question, is whether this is permanent signage.
Yeah, this is proposed signage to be left up there. If this was temporary and they went through the avenues to get this as a temporary sign, then the material, they wouldn't have to come for a variance for that, for example, for the material use of it.
So that's why you want permanent signs to be more substantial.
Correct.
It's as if
better
it were,
materials.
they're proposing it as permanent then, in other words. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is just an interesting question of mine. If this was painted as a mural, would that bring up the same situation?
To my and Ricky can correct me if I'm wrong, for murals and things like that, we don't have purview, we don't look at those, correct? If it's like a mural, that's handled by a different group?
Because it's not an installation.
Yeah.
So I just have to note that that's kind of weird. Like, if they literally painted this on the building, it would look identical, function identical, but they wouldn't have to be here. Yeah, yeah, okay, all right.
Right. All right. Any other questions?
Let's see what they have to say.
All right, do we have a representative for this case, VAR 24-190, Monongalia Art Center, 107 High? Thank you.
I am Aldana Bird. I'm the programming coordinator at the Monongalia Art Center at 107 High Street. We are wanting to put up these banners because we have posters out front, but it's not enough at the scale of this building. We have people regularly who come in, and even though the Mon Art Center has been there since the mid-'70s, people come in regularly and say, I've lived in Morgantown my whole life, I had no idea there was an art center here. The History Museum, which shares a building, struggles with the same issue with signage. These banners that we're proposing are very similar to what other cities do on historic buildings for cultural centers. The materials are similar to what other art centers use, and they're lightweight, and so they need minimal intrusion into the building, into the historic building. If we used a heavier material, it would require more damage to our beautiful historic building.
How does it adhere to the building?
It'll be with grommets and like bolts.
Okay.
Yeah. We're hoping that these signs will enhance the historic building, will enhance South High Street, will bring more attention, as I said, to the Art Center, to YCF, the History Museum, and one of our new programs, the Artist and Entrepreneurship Program, which we have resident artists. That program is in partnership with Main Street Morgantown, who received Benedum funding and is using that funding to help us with these banners. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, I was kind of wondering generally if they, because you're like a nonprofit, right? I wonder if does a nonprofit fall within the definition of a business under the Section 136909? I wonder.
I don't think it references a business specifically. I think it's non-residential kind of like use for
Okay.
that. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not able to quote it. But I think it looks at it more non-residential signage versus residential, not necessarily.
Doesn't really matter what the function of the entity is. Yeah.
I think it's usually assumed that it's business because
Yeah.
that's what most signage would be put up for, but I'm not sure it references it.
Okay.
But these are intended to be permanent, more or less? They're not going to change like every year or?
Not every year, no.
Okay.
Do you know if around Morgantown there are, like, on WV's property or anything, is there anything similar to this?
I believe so. Even Andrew White Guitars has a banner.
Oh, yeah.
It's much smaller. It falls
That's right.
in regular sign sizes, I believe, but it is a similar banner style sign.
Okay. So it's not, you're not setting a precedent necessarily
I don't believe so.
in Morgantown, but also this is, just to reiterate what you said, as far as purpose, construction, materials, it's industry standard.
Correct.
Yeah, this is the kind of signs you see every time you see like an old
Yeah.
Greek Greco-Roman
Yeah.
building.
I've
It's
seen
always
these,
this signage.
I've seen these 1,000 times, but I just sort of,
Yeah.
okay.
And you're right, like that building kind of goes unnoticed.
Yeah.
People don't really, nobody,
Yeah.
people don't just walk in there.
Yeah, even with like an easel sign out front, and we have the permanent poster holders out front,
Yeah.
it's not enough to the scale of the building.
Yeah. So the intention of this signage is to basically increase the amount of foot traffic in the building?
Yeah, and bring awareness to the
Raise
different
the
entities.
profile
Yeah.
of what you do,
Correct.
your operations.
Yeah.
And two, you could go in terms of enhancing the permanence of the sign installation, you could, like, install it within some kind of panel, but then that's more, there's more of an impact on the integrity of the, structurally, of this historic
Yeah.
property. And that's, so you're balancing that, too. We want signage that's going to raise our profile, but we need to take into account, hey, this is an historic property. It's not, can you speak, is it listed in the
It
state
is.
register? It is, so there's that, too. It's listed.
And also, these are all, nonprofit entities, educational. I mean, it's not like we're giving some unfair business advantage to them, and there's like, a private museum across the street that's, you
Right.
can't put up
Well,
a sign
yeah.
of a similar
And it's not
character.
primarily commercial either. It's more historic preservation,
Education.
cultural enhancement of the community.
And it's a feature of the unique, what that building is. I mean, like we've been saying. I mean, I almost don't recognize those buildings as museums unless I see those signs. Like literally, if I
Yeah.
go to a city and I see those signs,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, museum.
Yeah.
Because you've got your, I forget how you reference it, but the audio tours, but the entrance for those wanting to take that downtown tour, it's kind of around the side.
It is, yeah.
And that signage is
Minimal.
subdued,
Yeah.
too. So, I mean, you're making a bid to, integrating what you're trying to do in terms, in the context of what the rest of, on the banner, it's enhancing community through what we do.
Yeah.
So there's that, too.
And
So
it's a
you're
big,
trying-
it's an exceptionally large building. It needs a larger sign
Right,
proportionally
right.
to have the same, grab the same attention.
Because even though, the federal building right next door, it's a lot newer. Its
The courthouse?
function has changed, yeah. Everyone knows I think just about everyone in town knows, oh, that's the federal building. And that's where the, judiciary does what it needs to do. Your building, in contrast, it's always been there. It's a handsome, distinguished building, but as you say, not everyone is necessarily sure about what your building is all about, so.
Well, we're on a roll tonight with the findings of fact.
Yeah.
Yes, we
yeah,
are.
Really, those are good.
They very much are.
I will reread these when I go to bed tonight.
I think thank you. We may have additional questions for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the findings of fact are relatively straightforward. Really, it's not even the materials for me, it's the aerial.
Yeah.
But the proposed size of the banner, they're not out of proportion with the building.
Right, and we routinely see signage variance requests come in asking for an overage because that's just, our signage code is outdated. And in order to keep up with the Joneses, these businesses have to have bigger signs. And our code, as of right now, does not allow for that. So-
Right.
Yeah, we do one for Earl Core Road like every month, and then over by
Yeah.
So the,
Ruby over there.
you could make an argument, well, maybe we shouldn't grant what's being requested, given, like, the setback here off of High is not comparable to usual setbacks along the,
But we don't use
Core.
we don't use that logic for any of the other ones.
right?
We haven't.
No, I'm just speaking to, like, the proportionality,
Yeah.
factoring in the distance setback from the High Street center line, and also the speed of the vehicular traffic. It's not, it's High Street, people aren't whipping along at 35 miles an hour, but still, given all that,
Yeah.
the banners are not out of proportion with
No.
the size of the structure.
I do have a quick question for you. If you don't know, it's okay, but do you know how this particular size was developed or chosen?
We worked with a professional graphic designer and a committee that was, had members from the Mon Art Center Board and Main Street Morgantown Board, and we looked at different sizes
Okay.
and compared them to other historic buildings with similar signage, and concluded that these, would serve the purpose best.
Okay.
Right.
So it's not like we're going to go as big as we can just because. Okay.
So they are only 5 foot wide. Does anyone want to propose maybe changes in phrasing to the findings of
I don't think
fact?
we did public
I think
comment.
We haven't done public
Oh,
comment
that's true,
yet.
yeah, okay. Let's do that first, I'm sorry. We're going to go ahead and open the public comment for case VAR 24-190 Monongalia Art Center, 107 High Street. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to this case, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, close the public hearing. I'm going to make a motion to accept the findings of fact. Do we have a second?
I'll
Or
second it.
do we need further discussion?
No.
No,
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept findings of fact for this case, VAR 24-190. We have a second by Mr. Misfeld. How do we vote?
Aye.
Okay, we've accepted the findings of fact. I make a motion to grant the requested variance for VAR 24-190 Monongalia Arts Center, 107 High Street. Do we have a second?
A second.
And
There wasn't a staff condition or anything?
yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. We're
Oh,
rolling
yeah.
along too fast here. I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, go ahead.
Sorry. Please see the attached application to review the findings of fact listed, as staff had no comments or modifications, as well as customary with sign variance petitions. No recommendation is submitted by staff concerning whether variance should be granted.
Thank you. And no conditions.
Correct.
No conditions referenced for this case. So we did make a motion to accept the findings of fact, and we had a second. We granted the findings, or accept the findings of fact. Let me remake the motion. I'm going to make a motion to grant the requested variance for VAR 24-190 Monongalia Arts Center, 107 High Street. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, Mr. Plyler seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we've granted your variance, your requested variance for your case, VAR 24-190. Please keep in mind that decisions rendered by this board are subject to or can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Monongalia County. You will receive written notification within generally 10 business days, but keep in mind during that 30-day appeals window, any work that you undertake, you do at your sole financial risk. Thank you very much for coming down this evening. Next case is VAR 24-191 for Fareed Hesham, 442 Bayard Street. Request by Fareed Hesham for variance relief from Section 1365 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code regarding minimum off-street parking requirements for a dwelling, two-family, City Tax District 13, 5th Ward, Tax Map 29, Parcel 85 in the R2 Single and Two-Family Residential District. Mr. Thompson?
The applicant seeks to remodel the above referenced location into a two-family duplex. The remodel includes replacing the roof, putting in new flooring, new drywall, and interior work. It'll be a 2,600 square foot remodel. The building is pre-existing, but lost its non-conforming status after being vacant in accordance with Section 1373-05D2, non-conforming uses. The first image is that standard top-down map showing the site as well as the kind of surrounding location to it. The second image shows the home kind of from the bottom bend, looking at it up, showing that part of the yard of the home. And then the last image is the other side on, if you're looking at the one previously referenced, it's that left side, facing it as you're going down to that turn, looking at that side of the home as well as the part of the yard there. Based on conditions listed above, the applicant requests the following: variance relief in the number of 3 spaces in accordance with minimum off-street parking requirements. And that concludes staff report.
Thank you. Do we have a representative for this case? Please approach, state your name and address for the record.
Dylan Goodwin, business address 983 Cuthert, Brewston Mills, West Virginia.
Okay. So you're representing Mr. Hesham then?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to just describe what you're proposing or justification for your request?
He had taken on this property, obviously, for its potential. It was a dilapidated structure in the city of Morgantown, which, as soon as he bought it, he was closely talking to a few people at the code office. So the objective is just to get it brought back up to date. There are holes in the roof, and obviously the same as most businesses in Morgantown, to make a few dollars off of rental. He was under the impression after speaking to code that it was able to be used as a multifamily. He's already purchased a structure. He's willing to use it as a duplex. We're just trying to get there. If there was a way to put off-street parking on the property, we would, but there is currently no option, being that I think you might have 15 foot, which is a grade, around the property at any given point. And there are various water lines that tail around that main water line.
So you can't grade it?
There's
to level it.
no possible way.
Oh.
There's not enough room between the property lines, and the water meters for adjacent properties conflict right there.
Right.
It's a very, very tight site.
Very.
That's tight.
Yeah, it's really.
I mean,
good.
could you add fill on the back?
No, I don't believe so. I believe it'd put us, I mean, we'd be in here for another variance for the driveway. We'd be entirely too close to other property lines.
Right, all right. Yeah, I can't from that third or second photo, it's hard to tell the depth
Yeah.
there behind. Yeah. all right.
So where that blue car's located in the picture, is that just a rent off the street?
That
Or what
is
is-
an adjacent, there's a home that's
Okay.
not depicted there,
Property.
another duplex, I believe.
Even, from the looks of the information provided, even if you were able to construct something for off-street parking, it really looks like you'd get like one spot.
Yes.
So you'd be here regardless, for the exact same question.
Correct.
Okay.
So this will be two units.
2 units. We were given the impression it could be used as 3, but it had lost its grandfather status, which we weren't aware of. Mr. Fareed was the one doing all of the fact-finding. It was his property. He had already purchased it based off of conversations he had had with other rental people in the area, and then code.
The,
The problem is, I mean, it is tight back there. I mean, where is how congested is that street already with street parking?
Right.
It's congested down the line.
Is it
There's-
restricted or there is on-street parking?
Oh, no, there's no on-street parking. There's no on-street parking right there. There is a church
Yeah,
within
that's not a public lot.
50 feet. It's not a public lot, it's a pay lot.
so that, it mentioned in the packet about the church having an agreement with,
As a viable option, we spoke to the church when this issue arose, and they were more than willing, as long as, obviously, it was paid ahead by Mr. Fareed, and he would have to include it on the rent, because the objective is to rent to students. He could acquire 3 spots from that.
Okay. But as of yet, there's no formal agreement signed or anything?
No, sir.
So, I mean, this really can't even be used, this lot really can't even be used residentially without a variance.
Yeah,
I mean,
but that's not,
you can't put any parking anywhere.
but that's not, that's a unique quirk, like, it's not, they didn't generate the problem.
Yeah, right, but that's what I'm saying, without the
Yeah.
variance, it's like an economically useless piece of property.
Yeah, and the city's goal is to get these properties back into service.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a blight, you know, with
Yeah.
that, yeah. Okay, someone's not willing to take care of it.
Is the city in a position to make make provision for on-street if it's physically, or it's just, the street is so narrow that's not even practicable?
you can't pass 2 cars at any point.
That street doesn't look much more than 8 feet wide.
Yeah.
No, it's
There's
real
no,
tight.
there's no point you can go 2
Yeah.
cars beside each other without encroaching on somebody's property.
So if a tenant has a vehicle, I mean, what's their closest option is, you know,
The
a pay lot, right?
The church or the pay lot, which I do know,
But the church is that's a private lot.
yes.
Yeah.
It's a private lot that was, like I said, they were willing to write up with us. I've got messages, we just never went through with
Okay.
it because we don't know the status. There's no point to pay ahead when we don't know the.
Right, yeah. Makes sense.
And then the next one would be above that church, like on the other side of that
I'm not
plague.
super familiar above the church. I know there's one
There's a
across the
pale
street,
lot.
well, right up the road here,
Yeah.
which is within 100 yards of the home.
But, I mean, for purposes of the variance, whether that agreement with the church exists or doesn't exist, or even if you just didn't even address that, the question that we have is it okay to not have parking at this particular property? It doesn't really have anything to do with the church.
The variance is almost like it's a moot point, because physically, even if we grant, or make an allowance, all right, we'll grant you your variance, say, for 2 spots. It's almost a moot point, because the physically, the property won't allow for any spots.
Well, we have to grant it or they can't use it per the requirements of code.
So this must have been previously granted, and then it was vacant, so it lost. And then.
At one time, it was up to 3, but then that grandfather
Correct.
status
To my
was-
knowledge,
was
correct.
was expired, yeah.
But likely, this house was constructed before any zoning even existed. And so there was no requirement at that time
Yeah.
for any parking. This is all a problem of new zoning and wanting to reuse an old property.
It's pretty much exclusively students back there,
Yeah.
down that way. So some of them might not even have a vehicle.
Right.
I'd say it's not our purview, but someone's gonna park their car on that yard. It's gonna happen.
There's no, I mean, if they have a 4-wheel drive truck,
Yeah.
they may be able to, but the grade
Oh,
is
really?
a sheer face. You can't
It's
see
that
from the-
steep.
yeah.
Good, okay.
And so you're going to go with 2 units, right?
Correct.
How about we grant for 2? And then the property owners, it's on him in terms of making the arrangements either with the church or,
Yeah, but that's still, like, the requirement is 1.5 per unit, and that's how they're at 3
The variance is
for all of it.
yeah, for 0 parking spots, right? Yeah.
currently.
They're not asking for 1 or 2.
Because
They-
one
they
isn't
need relief from
realistically-
any required off-street parking.
So it's, Mr. Thompson, can you speak to, all right, so the ordinances require for each dwelling unit, it's 1.5.
Correct. Yep.
Can we give a nod to that requirement, but grant the variance for just 2? Since,
You're referencing you want to allow a variance relief of 2 spaces instead of the 3? Is that what you're suggesting?
But I don't think that makes a difference. to them.
Yeah, I don't think one
I don't
still
think
is
there's a
not
difference
feasible.
between 2 or 100.
right, because they're going to have to make off-site arrangements, yeah.
Yeah, because if we did that, then they're required to have 1, and 1 is just as feasible as 100.
Right, right,
It's
right.
just not possible. It's either it's granted
At 1.5.
or the
per-
project doesn't happen.
Right.
And I
But
don't-
you could have just like 3 parking lot membership or spots that are
That's
part
what
of
I
the rent.
discussed with Mr. Thompson here.
Yeah.
To speak to that, before they
So
went
we
to...
can make that, you can make that condition, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're super good. Before the variance relief was being applied for by them, we were actually talking about the idea of maybe a conditional use, because there is some sections of the code that permit a shared parking space, and then there's a bunch of other qualifications that need to be met for that to work. For the church to function as that conditional use per code, they're too far, and then the way that the church is running it, and then just a bunch of like little things kind of make it to where they actually can't pursue that conditional use. So that was the original idea of when they approached us, saying, "Hey, by the way, this church is willing to maybe cut us a deal and kind of figure something out. Would that work for a conditional use?" And by what the code says, I mean, if they wanted to pursue that separately, sure, but for the purposes of our off-street parking, it doesn't meet that conditional requirement
Right.
due to distance, just being a little bit out of it, and then also the connectedness of it, and that the church's parking lot isn't designated as like a parking.
Yeah.
You know, like it wasn't designed to be a shared parking space. It was just for that church's use.
Okay. Yeah,
So-
we've had a case about conditional use parking lot and previously. It's somewhat different from this.
Yeah, it's almost close enough to work, and then almost the right kind of thing with it, but there's just too much where it's snagged to where it can't be justified for that conditional. But to add, and Ricky could correct me if I'm wrong, I believe if the board wanted to, they could add that as a condition of approval. They will approve the variance on the condition that they acquire those churches' space or another shared space. Would that be possible or no? Okay.
What's being proposed is asking if they don't have to provide any.
Correct.
And it's, the way I read that, is that really the church is incidental, the church parking lots. It's great. It's great that they're pursuing that because you need something. But for the purposes of this specific property, the question is, on-site parking or not? Are they going to be required to do that? And that's
Yeah, as is for their variance relief, related to this, the only condition given, because this isn't a conditional use hearing for the BZA for this case, is that they're only given relief in reference to the number of parking spaces
Right.
being 3. That pursuit of those church spaces, like you said, is kind of secondary and good and nice, but at least as what they are requesting, that is not a condition,
okay.
unless
And-
the board decides otherwise.
Right, and it's a historic quirk of the tight site that you can't provide the on-street parking. Right. I mean, it's really clear. There's really no, there are no qualifiers to that.
And it's not this isn't a self-created problem because the problems existed from the get-go, given
Yeah.
the character
And-
of the property.
If whoever wanted to do if somebody else came in, decided they were going to do it instead, the same problem.
It still wouldn't be a self-created
Right.
problem.
Right.
Right.
But the issue, I mean, I think the issue is it's already very congested back there. And without, I mean, if we're gonna have two residential units and there's no off-street parking, there's no street parking. I mean, it's
Well,
just, there's gonna be, you know.
Yeah, the new property owner is trying to bring,
Yeah.
it's not a self-created problem, but he's trying to do his due diligence, but doing his utmost to satisfy the requirements of the zoning ordinance with respect to parking, given the restrictions imposed upon him by the property.
Do we have any sense of what the sort of occupancy rate of all of the units in that area is?
Not to my knowledge. I would assume, and from what I've roughly seen when looking at the case, again, not doing a deep dive, I mean, the people down the road, it's not like it's a line of vacant homes or,
Okay.
Every other home is vacant. To my knowledge, it's
But it's
relatively
similar.
normal.
Maybe the other buildings, structures, generally 3 units per.
that I'm
With-
not aware of the
Oh, all right.
units.
But there isn't a great degree of variability with regard to number of units per structure. It's uniform.
To my knowledge.
Other houses, properties in that, up there, is this common to not have off-street parking?
I believe it's pretty common. The house right up from us has one parking spot,
Okay.
but I believe it encroaches on Mr. Fareed's property too much to really be a parking spot. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
They just threw some gravel there. And that's all it has. The apartments that end that street, like on the end of the street, there's like townhouse-looking apartments. And they have a spot, it looks like they've got like 10 spots down there. I know it's not enough for the capacity of that
Okay,
apartment.
I mean, I know that Dallas Street off of Forest is just, it's full of cars parked on that street.
Yeah.
So there's definitely no off-street.
So do you think it's a fair statement to say that once this house is finished and occupied, that the lack of off-street parking, it's not the only property in the area that does that, right?
Correct.
And then the only other complication I can see with respect to church operations or whatever, with respect to mass times and needing parking space, can you speak to anticipated conflicts there?
I cannot.
Well, I mean, that's a whole nother, the agreement is going to be written in such a way that
Yeah.
my tenants are going to have unlimited access to, or the spaces that Mr. Freeze paid for.
Yes.
That's between you and the church, and that really doesn't come under our purview either, but do you see
Well, it
any
does to the
conflict
extent
there?
that if we just allow there to be residential places with no off-street parking, I mean, we're inviting it to get more and more dense back there.
Right.
If parking, even if it's off-site, is provided for, that at least can mitigate against that.
Yeah, can you speak to, I mean...
But
the-
I'm in that parking lot every day because my kid goes to
Oh,
daycare
oh,
there.
really?
So
Oh,
I know
wow.
that church lot's not full. I mean, I think they probably already got nearby units
Right,
who are using
okay.
that lot.
So even projecting into the future, you don't see...
No. I mean, the only time it's probably packed in that lot is on actual church Sundays.
Right.
But there's two lots. So there's a lot next to the church and then there's one across. And I think that's probably the one where they would get those
During mass times.
parking spots, because that's
Oh,
not nearly
across the
as-
way. Okay.
Yeah, because that's not used as much.
Right. All right. Any other questions? No. All right, thank you, sir. All right, we're going to go ahead and open public hearing for VAR 24-191, Fareed Hesham, 442 Bayard Street. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to this case, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, close the public hearing. Mr. Thompson?
Please see the attached application to review the findings of fact listed. As staff had no comments or modifications, staff have no objections to the applicant's request for variance relief. If the Board of Zoning Appeals grants the applicant variance relief from Section 1335-04A, Part 4 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code, the new principal structure shall be subject to the following conditions as stated in your packet.
Thank you. Yeah, there are two conditions for this case referenced on, well, it's page 5 of 5 of this section of the meeting packet. Thank you for the findings of fact. They're very thorough and detailed, especially I want to just reference the variance will allow the intent of the zoning ordinance to be observed and substantial justice to be done because it provides a practical solution. It does.
It does.
So, any further discussion? I'm going to make a motion to accept the findings of fact for VAR 24-191, Fareed Hesham, 442 Barrett Street.
I second.
So we have a motion to accept findings of fact for this case, seconded by Mr. Plyler. How do we vote? Aye. I am going to make a motion to grant the variance request for the parking allowance for that will be in compliance with zoning regs. For VAR 24-191, Fareed Hesham, do we have a second for that motion to grant?
I second.
So we have a motion to grant the variance, the requested variance, seconded by Mr. Plyler. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye. So we have granted your client's variance request for his application. The decision we just rendered can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Montague County. You will receive written notification within about 10 business days from planning. Any work that you or your client undertakes during this appeals window, which is 30 days long, you do at yourself financial risk. But thank you for coming down this evening. Have a good evening. Thank you. All right, we have one more case. Thank you. Conditional use 24-192, Maura Miller, 15 Brookhaven Street. Request by Maura Miller on behalf of Brewston Farm Services BFS for conditional use of a pole pylon sign install in accordance with Table 1369.06.01 regarding permitted signs in the ISOD District, City Tax District 14, 6th Ward, Tax Map 45, parcels 5.2, 6, 7, and 7.4 in the B2 Service Business District. Mr. Thompson.
The applicant seeks conditional approval to install a pole pylon sign at the above referenced address. The pole pylon sign will be used to display the BFS logo, DQ logo, and gas prices located at the gas station Mini Mart. That first map is the standard top-down look at the parcel and the surrounding area. And the second one is kind of their design of the way that the sign looks. It's kind of engineering and things structurally and what will be held on those signs. The third is a layout kind of design of the site, including the gas station where the pumps are, parking, etc., as well as the reference location of the pole pylon sign. Please note, the applicant was granted variance relief on November 21st of 2024 concerning pole pylon appearance standards as well as service display area. The information regarding that sign has not changed since that public hearing that they were granted variance relief for. And that concludes staff report.
Thank you very much. Do we have a representative for this case? Thank you, sir.
Yes, Howard Goodstein, DFS, 116 Shannon Drive, Morgantown. So if you remember, I was here last month, and we talked about this sign. It's the pylon sign. It has the 3 panels, as Sailor referenced. The height, which we discussed last time, because in the ISOD district, we needed not a variance for the height, but you guys had the final say on that, and all those variances and height requirements were granted at the last meeting. Quite frankly, I had an oversight of I forgot to put in for the conditional use, or we would have done this last time. So we talked about the sign, industry standards, and all of those things last time, and so we're kind of here to check the box of what I failed to do with the initial application. But it's the same sign we talked about last month, it's same drawing, nothing's changed.
Right.
So if you have any questions?
Well, nothing's changed, so, okay, so, and no conditions.
Yeah, as is customary with signed petitions, there are no recommendations as well as there were no conditions added.
Right, because, again, it's just for the conditional use, technically. All right, so, yeah, thank you. We may have questions, but not likely. Okay, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing for this. Specifically, this is the conditional use that relate to the variances for this pole pylon sign that were all approved at the last regular meeting. So this is the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to granting this conditional use for the pole pylon sign, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing.
After review, staff had no additions, corrections, or modifications to the findings of fact presented in the application attached here too. As is customary with signed petitions, no recommendation is submitted by staff concerning whether conditional use should be granted, as well as there are no additional conditions. That concludes staff report.
Thank you. All right, so, I mean, the findings of fact are referenced, and they all do state will have no effect because there have been no changes in the proposed pole pylon sign since we granted all of the requested variances that relate to this pole pylon sign. So I'm going to make a motion to grant the findings of fact. We do want to note, too, there are no conditions, no recommendations, which is customary because it's a signage conditional use request. So I'm moving to grant or accept the findings of fact, noting that there are no changes to the proposed design.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept findings of fact, seconded by Mr. Plyler. I'm going to make a motion to grant this conditional use request by Brewston Farm Services.
We got to vote on the fact.
Correct.
Finding of fact.
Oh, yes, I thought we did. Okay. We need to vote on whether we're going to accept the findings of fact. How do we vote? Thank you, sir.
Aye.
Aye.
So we've accepted the findings of fact for CON 24-192. I'm going to move to grant the requested conditional use for CON 24-192. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion to grant the conditional use for this case, seconded by Mr. Plyler. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we've granted your requested conditional use. Thank you very much for coming down this evening. Again, written notification, 10 business days. The decision can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Montague County, and any work that you do during that 30-day window, your client does, or you do, at your sole financial risk. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Do we have, I think we do, have announcements? Do we want to just mention the proposed, we do have a calendar.
Yeah, it was, the announcements being for the 2025 BZA meeting schedule to have it voted on would be an announcement. Yeah, correct. So proceed, if you guys are in favor of it, or how you...
Do we need an actual motion to accept the calendar?
They
We
do.
do? Okay. I don't see, nothing jumps out to me with respect to major holidays. So I move to accept the proposed 2025 BZA meeting schedule.
Seconded.
So we have a motion to accept the proposed meeting schedule calendar for 2025, seconded by Mr. Misfelt. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, so we have accepted the proposed calendar for 2025. Do we have any other announcements besides happy holidays?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Just happy holidays, and the weather's kind of looking like it's going to be gross, so just be kind of safe out there.
Be
So,
safe. Yeah, for next week, that's right, yeah.
Yep.
It's going to be looking Christmassy.
It will.
Let's put it that way. All right, so I guess I move to adjourn this evening's regular meeting for December 18, 2024. No
Seconded.
objection. This meeting is so adjourned. Let me just wait a moment.